Congratulations! You are in the right place at the right time. This is the Summon Courage, Change Everything podcast with Matthew Levy, an inspiring interview with a guest who has achieved big goals in life and work and who will divulge their secrets to success. Today, now, the man behind the microphone, Matt Levy.
Hello, Summon Courage, Change Everything listeners. My name is Matthew Levy, the host of the podcast. If you like what you hear, please be sure to leave a 5-star review or the equivalent wherever you're watching this podcast. I'm so pleased to have Ben Bowman with us tonight. Ben is the founder of Sweat Equity Group, which is a business growth advisory firm that helps organizations identify the right strategy and team alignment that ensures productive and sustainable results. He is also the founder of Go Halfsy. Almost everywhere you shop offers a refer a friend reward when someone you know signs up and credits you for inviting them. From apartment complexes to cell phone providers and everything in between, you can turn your connections into cash today. Go Halfsy allows you to register every account that you have in one place. The best part, you split the money so you both win. Sign up, match with a friend, and split the cash. Hey, Ben, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
Excellent, Ben. So we're going to have some fun talking about how you summon courage to achieve big goals in life and work. And in prep for our podcast, I know personally that you have made some big, bold changes in your career, more than once, in fact. I know most recently you left what many people would consider to be a steady job in favor of pursuing these couple of businesses. Tell us that story. Tell us how it came to be.
Yeah, I mean, probably like most stories, you'd have to go back a little bit to really understand how we got to the most recent change. But, you know, for me, I've always known since I was early age that I was meant to be an entrepreneur. And really that was for two reasons. I was a young capitalist from day one. I was always the type that I was wheeling and dealing. I was trying to find ways to make money off of anything. I was, you know, if my family was taking a road trip to visit family and we went to an area that sold something that I didn't sell in my hometown, I'd empty my piggy bank, buy it, come back and resell it for a markup. I made profits off my first few vehicles that I bought. I, you know, worked a few different jobs to pay my own way through college. And so I kind of always had that tilt to me that I was really entrepreneurially minded. But the other element that kind of led me to know that I was meant to be an entrepreneur was really the fact that I would say that I've accepted this more as I've gotten older, but in the beginning, it was really just an avoidance of authority and the fact that I didn't like being told what to do or how to do it. And as I've gotten older, I've learned to pick my battles. I've learned to, you know, kind of, I guess, mature that desire a little bit. But ultimately, it was always in me that I wanted to be able to control my own destiny, so to speak. I wanted to be able to control my own time and control my own energy and what it was spent on and how it was spent. So I always knew I was meant to be an entrepreneur and go out on my own. And it was more so just about the right timing. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And so, like you mentioned, I mean, I had a great job. I was in a place where I was building a good portfolio, building a good reputation, building great relationships with clients, and making great connections that are still valuable to me in this day. And it made this transition much, much smoother. But ultimately, there was always something that was kind of in the background. It was, when's the right timing for me to make a leap? And for years, I was just an idea guy. I was that type that I had a note full on my phone of just like what I thought were million dollar ideas. But ultimately, as anybody that's started their own business knows, the idea itself means nothing. It's all about the execution and what do you do with it. So I made myself a challenge in 2016. I said, I'm going to choose my favorite 4 ideas and I'm going to validate each one each quarter just to get a feel for which one had the most true potential. And I knew Sweat Equity Group could be a continuation of what I'd been doing for the past several years, and I built up enough reputation to be able to do that on my own. But Go Halfsy was really kind of my first dive into the tech entrepreneurship. And so I got to the third quarter of 2016 and I started working on this idea, and the market was there, the idea was there, the business model was sound, And I knew it was what I should start going with. So about February 1, obviously I took a couple of months to transition and get everything geared up. February 1, I moved into the center city, Philadelphia. I dove into every entrepreneurial group I could get a hold of, started making connections, trying to hustle my way through. And here we are 8 months in, and both are still alive. So I guess that's a win.
Oh man, there's so much there to unpack. So what made the timing right?
Yeah, it was more of just, I didn't want to live with regret of missing an opportunity. I really, a lot of authors, a lot of startup, entrepreneurs, a lot of successful business people, they tell you to fail fast and fail often, and it's ultimately, you're never going to know if you're going to succeed until you get up there and actually try it. So I was tired of kind of, playing up these what if scenarios in my head. And ultimately it came down to the time of, I've got to try it if I'm ever going to know if it's going to succeed or not. And the timing seemed right. I worked really hard last year to save up enough money to float my salary in the beginning. And I've always been good at pinching pennies when I needed to get through the bootstrapping phases, and everything kind of lined up well. And obviously, like anything else, there's some ups and downs that, I'm sure we'll probably talk about through this interview here, but like all in all, I knew it was the right timing. And so I went for it. And I think so far I've had nothing but just positive experience overall, because I think I followed what I ultimately knew I was supposed to do.
What do you say to the folks who are thinking about doing something like this and they keep repeating the mantra, but I have bills to pay, but I have bills to pay?
Yeah, it's there's obviously a lot of risk that goes into anything new, right? That's the definition of new, is it could go good or it could go bad. We don't know until we do it. So there's obviously a lot of risk that goes into it. I would just say, I'm not a fan of blind risk or, blind faith when it comes to business ventures. I think you should do whatever you can to validate what it is you want to do. In at least, whether we're talking about a business venture, whether we're talking about a personal endeavor, whether we're talking about just a personal growth, opportunity. I think it's about analyzing, what is the opportunity here? Does it really make sense? Is it really going to give me the fulfillment, the joy that I hope it will? And what is it going to cost me in order to do that? And if those look like they're going to line up and the cost benefit analysis, so to speak, makes sense, then I say go for it, And in my case, I analyzed what's the worst that could happen. The worst that could happen would be nothing clicks, nothing takes off. I burn through my savings, I go broke, then I go back to corporate America or go back and get another job, and I try again next year. So at the end of the day, the opportunity outweighed the potential consequence. So that's when I knew it was the right move for me.
You mentioned cost benefit analyses, and I know that you do have an analytical bent. Where does intuition come into play, or doesn't it at all?
Yeah, so I think it definitely does, because I think intuition, and there's a lot of studies on this too, intuition is ultimately passive pattern recognition. It's the way our minds and our psyche are analyzing, to use the same word, analyzing everything that we go throughout our entire life. So when we're faced with a situation, we're actually recalling all of these past experiences that just tell us what we should do. Even if we can't point to it, there's no data, there's no spreadsheet. Our gut is what's telling us to do it. And ultimately that's intuition, and that's based off all these past experiences. So I think for me, it was, the intuition told me that I should dive deeper, that I should determine, if this was really what I should do. And then, more of my analytical mindset kind of came in and confirmed that it was the right thing to do. And along the way, especially in the startup world, things change so fast, and adaptability is so important that I think intuition's probably even more important along the way than even in the very beginning for me, because I always had a bunch of ideas. And if I started talking about them, I could feel good about any one of them. It wasn't until I kind of weighed out the pros and cons to determine that there's a real opportunity there that I knew it was the way to lead. From that point forward, it's a lot of on-the-fly decision-making, which ultimately can come down to intuition.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is explore a little bit of the dream framework that our listeners are becoming quite familiar with, and we'll make sure that there's a link to that wherever you're watching the podcast. It involves 5 components: DREAM, devotion, resolve, energy, attitude, and mastery. I'd like to explore them here with you. So the D, devotion, is the concept that we become much more resilient when we're connecting our work and our life to something much bigger than the here and now. Have you given thought to what you're devoting yourself to really get that resolve, to make this thing a success?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it at the beginning. A lot of entrepreneurs are kind of forced into their new venture, whether it's a layoff, whether it's a recession, whether it's a family relocation, whatever it may be. For me, it wasn't so much that, because I had a lot of good things lined up already. It was more of going from good to great. It was more of like, kind of getting out of what could have been a complacent, steady, path to something I ultimately wanted to be doing. And that came down to, what did I ultimately want? And for me, one of my big kind of motivations in life is to kind of break a cycle within my family of financial instability. And so I am very financially motivated. I'm financially driven. It's kind of ingrained in me, and I'm never going to sacrifice my ethics or my morals or my own character to do that. But that's one of my motivators, because I want to provide better for my family. There's actually a blog and podcast that I really enjoy. It's called The Art of Manliness, and they do a really cool piece on being what's called a transitional character in your family. And that's really resonated with me, because it's this concept of, how can you be that person that breaks the cycle in the generational lines of your family? And for some people, that's something like alcoholism or incarceration or a lack of education. For me, it was, I wanted to really break that cycle of, kind of living paycheck to paycheck, as a lot of my family has been forced to do for various reasons. And so, one of my specific goals is, I want to be able to buy my mom the house in Tennessee that she wants and help her to actually be able to retire one day. Mm-hmm. So probably not the normal answer you're used to getting for that one, but for me, that's something that I'm ultimately devoted to being able to do for her.
Ben, actually, doing right by family is a significant motivator for people. It reminds me of a story of a woman by the name of Lita Abele, who was from the Philippines, and she had 2 young children. She knew that the only way to raise her children to have a great education and to have an opportunity for a prosperous life was for her to move out of the Philippines. So she wound up taking a job in the U.S. and leaving her children behind with her parents, the grandparents, and she came to the U.S. to be a maid, as many people from that country is their only opportunity, a domestic helper. And the first year as a maid, she had to live in a small apartment, sleeping in the den, and she had to keep her spoons and her plates under the sink and sleep on the couch. And this went on for quite a while. Well, fast forward, Lita made her way. It's a true American story. She made her way, became the CEO of U.S. Lumber, that has about $8 million in sales and 12 employees, and she's given her children a great life. And when she was asked, how did she keep going in those darkest of moments, separated from her family, sleeping on a couch, and basically inhumane circumstances, and she said, I just simply wanted to provide a better life for my children. I wanted to earn enough money that I could donate and leave a legacy.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, she came from way worse, went through way worse, and if I can even end up a portion of that success, I'll consider it a win. That's a great story, Matt. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. So the R is about resolve, the unwavering determination to fight through adversity. Now, many times this can happen with goal setting, to actually set goals in writing, and honor them. Talk to the audience a little bit about resolve and maybe goal setting.
Yeah, so it's funny, because when it comes to a startup or a lot of new ventures, especially something in the tech space, referring to the go halvesy part of my time, goals and projections, I mean, pretty much the only thing you can count on is that they're going to be wrong. That you set a target and then you work towards that target. So for me, it's been, I have the big picture goals of ultimately what I want to do, but the way that I get there is a little different of an approach because things change so frequently. So I've actually kind of assembled a few people around me that are other movers and shakers in the community that are driven and working towards the same things. And we have every week where on Sunday night, we send our top 3 goals for that week specifically. And then on Friday, we meet in person to evaluate how we did against those goals. And it's a really strong, positive form of accountability. And then the other, kind of element to it is just the fact that I'm shooting to continuously get better every day. So I have goals that I'm working towards to try to knock off the list or things that we're trying to achieve over a certain period of time. But ultimately, I'm worried about getting better every day, because if I can do what I'm supposed to be doing, if I can continuously, look back and say I'm better, I'm stronger, I'm smarter today than I was yesterday, I know I'll be moving towards those long-term goals as well.
Give our listeners an example of the type of goal that might be on that weekly hit list.
Yeah, so some of them are really specific. So let's say related to Sweat Equity Group, it might be coming out with a specific new blog on a topic that I've been, training on and I want to capture into written form. Or it might be even something to follow up on a few different leads for, high potential coaching within, a big organization. But on the tech side, it could be something as simple as, finish the research for my next marketing strategy. So for one of my, kind of marketing angles that I'm going to approach, finish kind of validating the research to determine how I'm going to best spend that money. So sometimes they're really simple like that. But then what we always do, and I left this part out earlier, is we have a long-term goal that we really try to quantify and put a progress tracker on that. So, for me, it's rolling out the initial prototype of what the site will do. So I try to do a actual numeric progress of where we're getting towards that, so that each week you can look back at the last week's report and make sure that not only are you knocking the things off your list in the short term, but that you're making real progress towards the big picture things as well.
Mm-hmm. People have great ideas, but if you don't get them down on paper, you take those great ideas to the grave.
Yeah, absolutely. So easy to do.
So let's talk a little bit about that inner voice. The inner voice that we all have, Ben, that creeps in and tells us that we're not smart enough, we're not good enough, we have self-doubt, and we have limiting beliefs. If you don't have that voice, you're not human. Talk to us a little bit.
All of those just today.
Great. Yeah. Well, this podcast is about vulnerability, and it's about real talk, right? So share with us what happens when that voice creeps in. Do you ignore it? Do you honor it? Does sometimes it win?
I think there's definitely times where it wins. My goal is just that I win more often than it wins. I think to ignore it is almost dangerous as well, because it is human. You're right. It's going to happen. And if your goals aren't enough to scare you, they might not be big enough goals. So, I think sometimes those things can almost be reaffirming that you're doing something worth, invoking fear or invoking some doubt or, some bit of insecurity in the process. And so I think it's important to acknowledge them, but then just refocus on, back to like what you talked about on the dream process of devotion. Ultimately, why am I here? Like when, Lita was, getting up every day and, and trying to go through what she was going through, remembering why she was doing it, what it was ultimately working towards. I think that's the most important piece, is just kind of staying focused with that right mindset and finding those things to kind of pull your compass back to the right direction, even when sometimes the emotion can be pretty derailing.
Yeah, we could go on in that topic for a while, but I'd like to talk about energy. I know firsthand that you bring incredible energy to the table every day. How do you modulate that? I guess the word would be to avoid burnout.
Yeah, and that's one that actually I've learned the hard way. I've unfortunately kind of felt what I consider to be burnout at different points in my career, where I would run too hard And it wasn't just that I was working too much, but it was running too hard without the right mindset or without the right grounding. And, without doing the things to kind of fill the tank back up, and the tank was just constantly running on empty, which just like a vehicle or, some sort of automobile that's bad for the engine, it's bad for us too. We have to find those things to kind of fill us back up. For me, those things I'm not a big city person at heart. I'm from a small country town in Florida. I've lived in even smaller towns than that at different points in my life. And I now live in the heart of the 5th largest city in the country. So sometimes it's just getting out of the city, taking a break to completely unplug from technology, from the hustle and bustle, from traffic. I love to camp. I love to hike. I love to get out and do stuff with my dog, and big sports fan. So things that kind of force me to, pull myself out of it a little bit and just kind of get myself to refocus. But I will say, being able to control my own schedule now, my productivity is up, but I wouldn't say that I'm even working more, because I'm able to control my own time and really focus on what I want to focus on. So my work-life balance has been pretty healthy lately because I'm controlling where I want to spend my time.
Mm. What's your morning routine look like?
Yeah, so that's one thing that actually is on my list to improve. The things that I've been trying to do lately. You want me to go specific?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not where you want to be, share with us what you aspire to do in terms of a morning routine, to get you in the right frame of mind, get you super productive.
Yeah, so a few things that I've been doing, both either from kind of personal health and wellness to productivity, is I stopped checking emails first thing in the morning, because it puts you in a very reactive mindset. So even going back to that, before I even get out of bed, I've started doing different types of stretching, even to get my body to kind of open up and to wake up before I get up and get moving. I'm a big fan of quotes. So I have at least 10 different quotes above my mirror in my bathroom that first thing in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth and kind of getting ready, I read through them. I try not to spend too much time on technology right away, because I want to kind of control my energy, control my own focus, not let outside influences control those. But then I'm admittedly not a huge morning person. I've never really been wired that way. So for me, I'm much more productive if I get up and I can kind of ease my way into my own schedule. So I get up, I have my coffee, I kind of sit down and usually try to work on something that I can put a lot of attention to right away. I don't want to check emails for the first hour or so. Then I'll get into kind of combing through some of the more reactive, necessary components of the day. I always try to work out in the middle of the day. For me, I'm at my best in the middle of the day, but it also, I think, kind of gives me that new burst of energy to push through like the afternoon and late afternoon. So that's more or less my normal routine. Is I really try to not do the reactive things right away. I try to control my mornings and put my energy on the things that I want to put them on. And it allows me to really feel like I have control of my day. Oh, one other thing that I started implementing a while back that really I feel strongly about this is the simple task of making your bed. I don't remember who it was, but it was a really successful military leader that talked about this. And he said the reason why he still does it, and he's 30 years out of the military, whatever it is he says, no matter what comes up the rest of the day, you will always be able to say that you accomplished your first task. You set yourself up with crossing something off the list, because it's always going to be within your control. So when you get out of bed, turn around, take 10 seconds, make your bed, and you've started off with accomplishing something.
There you go. Now, I pride myself in learning a lot about quotes, right? So I'm not going to let you off the hook. You tell the audience that you have 10 quotes above your mirror. What's your favorite one today?
Oh, the one it has been kind of my personal rallying cry through this whole process, and it's even in my email signature. I have it other places in my apartment too, is somebody could take the same hand you've been dealt and win with it. And I just love that quote. I love what it inspires, that somebody could take the same scenario, the same upbringing, the same challenges, the same resources, same thing you have, and they could win with it. So why couldn't you? And is that always going to be true? Of course not. But it's a reminder that excuses mean nothing, that it's all about what you do with what's in front of you and what you have that ultimately will make or break us. So that's one that I think is probably still my favorite one right now.
Excellent. And I'll volley Henry Ford, who said that the key to a successful life is to determine what your destiny is and then do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah, short and sweet sometimes. And this is good. This will be a shameless plug, but I'm working on what I call 52 courage quotes, and followers will be able to sign up for a mailing list of mine, and then every week for a year they're going to get a famous quote, but they likely may not have heard it, but it'll be married to a very high quality image that in one reason or another they go together. And I hope it to be just like what you have for you is this collection of quotes to inspire folks to do great things in their work and in their lives.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, let's talk about attitude, Ben. The power of a positive attitude. What's your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think it's everything. I think it's kind of like what we were just talking about. I mean, your attitude, your mindset, that's really going to be what you have to rely on when things don't go according to plan. When even though you have your normal daily routine, the first thing is a fire that you have to put out. I think ultimately your attitude is going to be what kind of carries you, or what you let kind of lead to your demise. So for me, it's I mentioned the quotes, but there's also a few other kind of reminders that I have around that are just kind of like mindset checks. That when I'm sometimes getting frustrated by a challenge I'm facing, or even if I'm just tired or feeling lazy or feeling beat up or frustrated, finding those things that just kind of remind you of why you're doing it in the first place, and kind of allow you to refocus that attitude. Because there's so many studies out there too. There's a book called The Happiness Advantage that talks about how when you're smiling, when you're happy, when you're positive, your brain is producing serotonin and dopamine, which leads to better problem solving, better critical thinking. You can think more strategically, you're more resourceful. So there's a direct correlation between productivity and true fulfillment or happiness. So being able to kind of keep that positive attitude not only helps you to feel better, but it leads to being better at what you do.
Yeah, Mike Tyson said famously, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how do you rebound from that is ultimately what matters.
Yeah. So you mentioned the one book. While we're on the topic of books, it reminds me of the next part, the last part actually of the Dream Framework, and that's mastery, the idea of continuous learning. So let me ask you this, Ben. What is the book that you most like to gift to other people?
So I would say I've been doing a lot of work with different interns, and I always have a passion for college and teen anyways. And so one that I've been gifting a lot recently is 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Mm-hmm. His writing style is very simple, but it's very easily applicable. And the book really does just change your mindset on so many kind of day-to-day things that we go through. And it's kind of a way to kind of retrain you from what we may have seen or what we may have learned into something that really is more productive. So I would say that's probably the number one that I gift out, at least lately.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. It's funny that you should talk about Ferriss, because this is a book that I'm reading right now, right? So this is Tools of Titans, and it's a summary of all of his most favorite podcasts, pretty apropos. In fact, some of the questions that I've started to incorporate into the podcast are some that Ferriss uses or that he's picked up along the way.
Yeah, I love his podcast. I'm a big fan of him as an author too, but Tools of Titan is a fantastic, I wouldn't even just call it a book, it's a fantastic resource, because it's so valuable.
Yeah, I have it all underlined with all kinds of interesting anecdotes, quotes, book recommendations. This book, I feel like he wrote it with me in mind.
Yeah, I'll tell you too, if I can add a second kind of layer to that answer, I've been on a kick of getting back into some of the old classic business or personal development books as well. Like, Seven Habits or Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Because I think and I've actually tracked down the original. I don't want the newer versions and the updated versions. I want the original, because what I love about that is there's a reason why those books have been so successful over so many decades, right? But it's also interesting to hear the examples and the metaphors and the things they use of whatever time they were written in, because it just helps you to remember to keep perspective in our own day-to-day problem solving as well. And to kind of think about, some of the things that they were projecting were major concerns 20 years, 30 years down the road, we were able to adapt and overcome pretty easily, or other things that they didn't think would be a big concern that actually became. So it's kind of a cool study of also like kind of, sociology, or kind of the evolution of business theory and business thought. And so I've tried to work some of those into recommending to some of these, younger, I say younger, even though I'm still early in my career myself, but some of the younger people that I've been able to work with colleges and teens, as kind of helping them to see, hey, it's not always just about what's big and cutting edge and popular right now, but look back and find out why some of these things have been so successful over so many years.
Mm. Well, right. I'm listening to you. I'm thinking about how the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, you mentioned books like Carnegie was 1936, maybe, but so many of the quotes that I love and a lot of us love come from ancient times. Right? How about the one from Aristotle? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is a habit. Right? And the list goes on and on. There's Seneca and Plato. I mean, I love this stuff, and I agree. So, yeah, we have a lot to learn from those times.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, I may be misquoting this, Matt, so correct me. I mean, you seem to be the king of quotes, but I want to say it was actually Will Smith that said it publicly. So he may have stolen it from somewhere, but it was something that I grabbed onto, and I've kind of held in the back of my mind. He said he loves to spend his time reading and running because you're always going to reach a point where your body tells you can't go any further, and you have to convince it that you can. You have to push through that wall and keep going. And it's kind of a metaphor for life, obviously. The other is reading, because no matter what you're going through in life, someone else in history has gone through it and probably written about it. So the more you read, the more you're able to problem solve, the more you're able to, kind of resource and hear what other people have done and overcome. And I always thought that was a really interesting look on those two activities.
One more about books and then we'll move on. Brian Tracy said that if you read one book a week for a year, it will put you in the top 1% of all income earners in that particular category.
Yeah, it is so true. I mean, that's similar to like Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers and the 10,000 hours. It's like, really, if you put the time into it, if you put the time into studying, these things don't just happen. That's one of my biggest frustrations with, the millennial generation, which I still fall into, is the fact of, looking at it and saying like, well, these things should just occur. These things should just happen. And some of that, what gets misconstrued as entitlement is almost valuable because it's a claiming, it's a confidence about a situation, but you have to pair that with the diligence and the consistency to, fulfill it and to go for it and to work for it and earn it, so I'm a huge supporter of that sentiment.
What advice would you give to your 19-year-old self?
Start sooner. Yeah. Fail faster. Try earlier. Time's the one resource we'll never get more of. So go for it. I do think there's so many different data points that I could point to of why I'm better suited now than I was at 19 to do what I'm doing now. So that's not to say that I would have, been on the same trajectory, that many years ago, but I wish I would have tried different things sooner rather than follow what I thought was the, kind of predictable path or the plan that, I saw other people doing. I wish I would have just, if I came up with an idea, if I wanted to pursue something, just go for it. The odds are that the consequence or the missed opportunity is not going to be as large as the potential, of what you could achieve. So I wish I would have just gone for it sooner.
Boy, that resonates with me, Ben. I feel like I spent so many years living the life that other people expected me to live. You know, stay out of trouble, go to school, get an education, um, get a good job, and you know you can wake up many years later. Not that those are bad attributes; those are fantastic attributes. But we all should be looking to live an extraordinary life, a life that you want to live, and that's different for all of us.
Yeah, and that last line that you just said, Matt, something I was just going to mention too, and I think that's so key. That one of the things I've learned is that I can't project my same motivations, my same desires on anyone else, and they can't on me. So I don't look at anyone that's working a normal job or following the normal path, or even who has ideas but doesn't want to pursue them. I don't look at them with judgment, because maybe that's not for them. Maybe the path that they're following ultimately is what they want to do and what they're called to do, what they're meant to do. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so important that, it's to each his own, right? It's all of us finding individually what we should be doing and how we should be doing it.
What's a piece of conventional wisdom that you just don't buy at all?
I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument, just using that same example, about higher education. The fact that, student debt is such a major issue. I believe in education, but I don't believe that our education system is adapting to modern technology and the accessibility of the internet. And the fact that, even years ago, there was the statistic that was, there was more information contained in 1 week of the Wall Street Journal than people would have had in their entire lifetime just a few generations prior. Mm-hmm. And so that's one area where, you could easily go either way on that. Some people say, absolutely, without a doubt, go to college right away. And other people say, no, don't go to it. It's a waste of money. Just go start your own business or go learn a trade or whatever. I don't think either one's necessarily right. I think it depends on the individual person, the individual situation, and the individual goals.
So you get an opportunity to put your favorite saying on a billboard on the highway that you want to pass along to as many people as possible, a busy highway. What would it be?
I would probably say, and this would also be, because hopefully I would pass it every day and be a reminder to me as well. Mm-hmm. Listen more, talk less. I think we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I think people that are naturally high performers, naturally have succeeded in different ventures, want to share that, want to promote it, want to push it out, want to give our input, give our advice. But I think there's so much to be said about just listening and observing. And I think a lot of times, and when I say listen, I mean not listening for what to say next, but listening to truly hear and be able to empathize and be able to think. I think there's just so many things that are going on in our society today that I think if we did more true listening and less reactive talking, I think we'd be much better off. So I think that would be a good reminder for all of us.
That's an excellent one for sure. Ben, as we wind down, is there a last piece of advice that you'd like to share with the audience?
I would say just go for it. We mentioned the quotes earlier, and one of the ones that I have up in my apartment is, if you want to succeed, double your failure rate. I think is a lot to be said about just going for it and going for it quicker. If you're going to fail, do it yesterday or do it today, not tomorrow. So, for me, if you're sitting there deciding whether or not it's the right timing, whether or not it makes sense, just ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? And if the worst thing that could happen isn't traumatic, or if it's something you can recover from, but the opportunity or the potential is there, and just go for it. Give it a shot. I think a lot of times we put self-imposed limits or self-imposed risk that doesn't always have to be there if we just go for it and give it a try.
That's fantastic advice. Ben, I'm sure that we're going to have listeners that are going to want to follow up with you based on this conversation. What's the easiest way, best way for people to track you down?
Yeah, so obviously any of the social media platforms you can get a hold of me. But the best way is my email. It's ben@sweatequitygroup.com. The meaning behind Sweat Equity Group is just helping organizations get the most out of their people and out of their resources. So thinking it's not always throwing more money at a situation. It's not always bringing in, mergers and acquisitions, sometimes you can really kind of find your ways to bootstrap your way through things. And then if you want to follow along the journey of my startup as a first-time tech entrepreneur, we have a platform called My Tech Startup Story. That's kind of a documentary style, if you will, of just what it's like to start a tech business from scratch, specifically as a non-technical founder. And then gohavesy.com is the name of the website for the startup. So if that's a concept that interests you, if you want to find a way to turn your connections into cash, find out where your friends shop, where you can sign up and make some extra money, gohavesy.com. Any of those, you can get a hold of me and reach me. I'd love to hear and talk more to anybody that wants to.
Ben, that's great. Thank you so much. What terrific insights. And to our listeners, please subscribe. Please rate us with a 5-star review and share with your networks. It's the best way to get the word out about these amazing interviews. I want to thank Texas Radio Fish for the music, as well as Levi Dillon for excellent podcast engineering. You can find Levi at levidillon.com. And again, this is Matthew Levy. And until our next episode, remember that when you summon courage, everything changes.